It is July 18th, and we are about to talk some hockey. How awesome is this? This is why we started the Hockey Talk Show, so that when other shows and outlets give up, we're here talking about rumors, talking about news, answering some questions, exchanging thoughts, being together, talking about the greatest sport ever. So excited to be here with you guys. As I said, it is Thursday, July 18th. It is 6 o'clock in the East at the time of our broadcast. If you're listening back on a podcast, thank you so much for doing so. We do have pretty big news for you guys today in the world of the National Hockey League. Ron Francis has become the 32nd general manager in the NHL. That's right. The National Hockey League now has 32 general managers as the expansion Seattle franchise named the Hartford Whalers, Pittsburgh Penguins, Carolina Hurricanes legend to their front office staff. Their first big acquisition, their general manager, the guy who's going to put it all in line for them. He is in the big seat, and we're going to break down why this is good and why it's not so good. Plus, we got some NHL rumors to get to, of course. Rasmus Ristolainen continues to be, much to my surprise, in the rumor mill. Mitch Marner, there's a little wrinkle here. There's a little thought. I want to throw something out. We'll get your thoughts. It makes a lot of sense to me. We'll talk about it for sure. And we have some thoughts on Patrick Laine as well. Talking RFAs, talking UFAs, talking trade rumors, talking about the newest general manager to hit the National Hockey League, all on this episode of the Hockey Talk Show. Man, it is good to be back. Thank you guys so much for being patient for a new show. It was like we went to free agency and then we went on vacation with the family, spent some time away, and couldn't get to a show. But the cool thing was, in that time span, we were able to launch the Hockey Talk Show blog, which is really fun for me. When we started this show, I wasn't much of a writer, wrote a little bit, but not too much. And been writing more in my other career as an on-air personality at WEHM Radio, and I've written for other things in various times, and it just sort of felt right. It was a little bit easier for me to get some thoughts out there with the blog, and some things lend themselves more to print than they do a live show. You know, some things don't garner a whole live show. It's just a, boom, here's a quick idea. Maybe you guys thought of this, maybe you guys didn't think of it, and now we have that. So the Hockey Talk Show has a blog, and it is up at hockeytalkshow.com. You can go and check it out. We redesigned our homepage a little bit too. As you can see, here's where our podcast is. These are all the latest shows. You can watch the videos directly from the website. And then we have, oh, look at this, live show on Facebook right now. And then we have our blogs here and some good thoughts in there about, the other good thing too is like we have this Artem Anisimov blog where we were able to have a little fun and, muse about the fact that Chicago traded him to Ottawa because they were pissed at him. Just fun stuff like that. We had the Ron Francis rumor because it sort of started surfacing last night. I think the Seattle Times, I think it's the Times, I don't know, whatever the local Seattle paper was, they were the first ones to leak it. So we had it shortly thereafter. So it's a cool place to, get in there and kind of have some discussions and check some things out, get some long form thoughts on things. We have a great piece on Capo Caco and some Jacob Trouba issues, because I think the Rangers do have some issues. I don't think that locking up Jacob Trouba is going to be as easy as Ranger fans are hoping it's going to be. They've got some moves to make for sure. They've got some cap issues, believe it or not, even though they're a rebuilding team. And I think they got some more fat to trim. They moved Jimmy Vesey, which I thought was a good move. If you've stuck with the Hockey Talk Show for a while, you know my feeling on the Rangers. And I've been saying this for quite some time, that they got to trim the fat. They had JT Miller, they had Jimmy Vesey, they had Chris Kreider. They had all these guys that were essentially the same type of player, all these mid-six forwards that, are these guys 15, 10 goal scorers, or are these guys 30, 35 goal scorers? Some of them had the potential to be big-time goal scorers, but none of them were ever getting there. And I think the abundance of them on that team sort of hurt that franchise a bit. And the Rangers did the right move. Credit to Jeff Gorton. He trimmed the fat. He moved, Miller he moved, and then Jimmy Vesey gets moved to the Buffalo Sabres, in the offseason here. And the Rangers are really starting to, I thought the Capo Caco pick obviously is a great pick, but I thought the Jacob Trouba move was top notch. Neil Pionk and the rest that they gave up in that deal, they got Jacob Trouba. I thought it was a good move. But as you'll read in that blog there, I think the option, I don't know if they'll want it, but I think the option might be more feasible to get Jacob Trouba in under a 1-year contract. And it was kind of crazy because I had this thought. I Googled around. Again, let me pat myself on the back for a quick second. Googled around. Nobody else was saying it. Put it out there. And I'm not saying that people steal from me. I'm just saying we got to the conclusion before a lot of other people did. But then in the next 3 days, I saw what's his name on the NHL Network was all like, oh, maybe the Rangers and Trouba should sign a 1-year deal. So you kind of breathe a sigh of relief because sometimes when you go out on these ledges, you can get shot down pretty quickly. But EJ Radick was the one on NHL Network who was like, yeah, maybe the Rangers and Trouba should get together on a 1-year deal. I think it makes sense. I don't think that Ranger fans should be disappointed by a 1-year deal. I think it's a nice thing to do. Gives the player some time to get some feeling about his city. It gives the team to get a feel for the player and see how he is. How is he interacting in the locker room? A lot of bad rumors about Jacob Trouba coming out of Winnipeg, right? It was kind of long speculated that he wanted to leave, and that doesn't fly well, especially in the Canadian markets. So he really caught a fair amount of abuse, maybe unfairly at times. But there is definitely a little bit of a bad vibe about Jacob Trouba. So I'm sure he's looking to turn that around, and a 1-year deal sort of kind of puts everybody at ease, in that instance. But I think it'd be a smart move because when you look at it, and I think we point this out in the blog, statistically, he's on par with Erik Karlsson, I think, the last 2 seasons. Now, nobody's going to argue that Jacob Trouba and Erik Karlsson skill-wise are on the same level, but statistically, for the last 2 years, at least they are. So if I'm Trouba's agent, I'm going in there screaming, going like, well, my client has as many points as Erik Karlsson has, and Erik Karlsson just signed an $11 million deal. What's up, Rangers? We all know that Trouba's not going to get an $11 million deal, but we all know that that's exactly what Trouba's representation is going to use to jack that price up as high as he can get it. So a little bit of drama there for the Rangers. It was a great trade. They have the arbitration date set. I think it's next week. I wouldn't really want to get there. July 25th is when Trouba goes to arbitration. I really wouldn't want to get there, to be honest with you. If I were the Rangers, I would settle that ahead of time, even if I did have to put together a 1-year deal for him. But we got to kind of keep our eye on it because it could lead, and this is another little trade rumor we'll touch on, and I touch on this in the blog. It's time to trade Chris Kreider. And I think a lot of Ranger fans will agree with me on that move that number 20 has sort of, he's past his stay. A lot of skill, a lot of speed. I love the guy's speed. I love watching Chris Kreider. When he's on, he is a phenomenally fun player to watch. He's that 30 goal scorer if he stays consistent and he's there all the time and he's not enigmatic. He is enigmatic as all hell. He disappears for large chunks of the season where you never really notice him on the ice. Feels like it's time to move on for Chris Kreider. And it's not a total loss. You know what I mean? Because there is a lot of value in Chris Kreider. I think the Rangers can get something back in return, even if it's just draft picks. You're not going to lose him for a 6th round draft pick. You're going to get something in return for Chris Kreider if you do wind up trading him. Angelo agrees. Time to move him as soon as possible. I appreciate the comment, my man. Really, really do. Matt and Priscilla on YouTube. How is everybody doing? By the way, we got to get those YouTube subscriber numbers up. So if you got people that are watching or listening, if you only listen to the podcast or you only watch on Facebook, shoot on over to that YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button for me if you can. We got to get our YouTube numbers up a little bit. It is super, super important. And of course, you could also support the Hockey Talk Show with our Anchor little feature that we have there. I'll put this in the links right now on Facebook and YouTube, and of course, it'll be in the podcast description. Super important. You can donate to the Hockey Talk Show here. You can give as little as 99 cents a month, and it all goes to help us putting on a show. And isn't it nice to have a Hockey Talk Show on July 18th when nobody else is talking hockey, yet we have all these sort of rumors going around? I think so. Liz doesn't hate Kreider, wondering if he'll be able to shine more without Hayes there. Yeah, Hayes was the other guy. Miller, Hayes, Kreider, VC, like these guys were all the same exact player. Maybe. And you never know, too. Maybe Gordon's sitting there looking at this like, I don't know, maybe Kreider and Capo, we got a little triple K line or something, or, is there another K player on that team? I probably should have looked that up before I went for that awful bit. But yeah, maybe there is. Maybe there's some new chemistry. Maybe Panarin shakes something loose in him. Maybe there is something there. Me, I would I would move him. I shouldn't say I would move him. I would definitely be calling around and say, Kreider's available for the right offer. What do you got? These are the phone calls that I would be making right now, because we had the bump on July 1st, a lot of activity pre-July 1, post-July 1, still a good amount of activity here. We had a trade the other day between, Chicago and Ottawa, so still some things going on, but we're going to see a little bit of a lull here, and then into mid-August, you're going to start to see that buzz really start to come back up when teams are getting back ready for training camp. Managers are coming back off of their vacations and their breaks, and they'll start picking up the phone and making phone calls heading into September when teams really start to get back together and guys start to get back into their cities and, start skating with each other. So definitely the groundwork for those pre-camp and in the middle of camp pre-season trade deals are going to start to get done right now. People are going to start making those phone calls. Rangers are going to be fine. They need to get rid of Kreider, Nemesnikov, and for the love of God, Shattenkirk. See, now, Liz, if you're still here, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I like Shattenkirk. I think he's had some rough times. I think it's always a little tough, and Tavares didn't go through this, but I think it's always a little tough when you go back to your hometown team and you start playing in front of your hometown fans and your hometown and your family is there. And, you go from playing in a different city where maybe somebody comes and visits you and you got to get some tickets and you'll go out to dinner and you'll do the whole thing every now and again, maybe 5, 8, 10 home games out of the 40. You have to deal with that. And then all of a sudden you have to deal with that for 41 out of the 41 games, where cousin Barry wants to come all the time. And then your third grade teacher is DMing you going, remember when I encouraged you and can I get tickets to the, all that stuff could become a full-time job, and it may not necessarily hit you in the first year. Sometimes it may take a little while. And I think that's what happened with Shattenkirk. I think he knows he's not been up to par, and I think he'll get his act together. He's a really good player. He is a really, really good player, but I understand the frustration with him for sure. Liz would love it if they get rid of Shattenkirk. He's not nearly as good as what he's getting paid. I can't disagree. I can't disagree with that, but there's something about the groundwork that Shattenkirk has laid out over the course of his career that I feel like he can get there. He's had some off times, a little bit of an adjustment period here in New York, but I feel like he's got it in him, whereas Kreider, it's just so much more mysterious and so much more inconsistent. So, I don't know. Angelo, what do you think about the Rangers goalies? I like a little Ranger talk, even though we want to talk Seattle and all those other players. I like that we're getting into some Ranger talk here up at the start of the show. What do I think about the Rangers goaltenders? Well, I think that the Rangers missed an opportunity a season and a half ago to trade Henrik Lundqvist because they would have gotten a boatload of picks back in return. Maybe even back around the time where Arizona was sort of deciding on Antti Rantanen. Last season, that was the time to make the move on Lundqvist. Right around that time before they send that note out, that was the time to move him and be fair and do the right thing and get your picks back in return and free up that $8 million to go out and make some other moves. Gorgiev, I like. He's shown some promise, but the thing is you got Lundqvist for this year and you got Lundqvist for next season. Gorgiev is he's an RFA after this season. I don't really recall any sort of outstanding goalie prospects. That Igor kid, right? I think he's sort of the buzz Ranger goalie coming down the pipe. 23 years old though, so a little bit of time there. I mean, I think the Rangers are going to go with Lundqvist for as long as they can. They have no other choice. And I also think that the Rangers, and by the way, this isn't crazy, are hoping for that New Jersey Devil rebuild where they burn it all down. They give their young guys an opportunity. They give their young coach an opportunity. And as we saw in year one of the Devils rebuild, boom, make the playoffs. Turn things around like that. Now, they missed in their second year. There's always that. But I think that the Rangers are hoping with Trouba and Capo Caco and Artemi Panarin, let's be honest, they're going to be a little bit tougher to play against this year. They're definitely going to be a little bit tougher to play against. And Henrik Lundqvist is going to help you out, The thing that is essential to me for the Rangers is you've got to get off to a good start. I think that it's always important to get off to a good start, but you have really got to get off to a good start if you want to compete this year, because if you're 15 games into the season, and you're fighting, if you're at 6-9 or even 7-8, 5-10, it's going to be a long year, because that, to me, that's going to weigh on Lundqvist. Now, Lundqvist's a professional as all hell. He'll be there for you no matter what, but it's harder to play in those early, they're not dog days, but those early days of the season where you're just trying to get back into those, into that groove, and you're just trying to get your skates under you and all that hockey cliches that players like to give. You're in for the season will look longer if you're not getting off to a good start. So to me, that's the key for the Rangers. And you know what? They should, because you got the buzz. You made the big trade for the big defenseman. You landed the fattest fish in the free agent market, and you drafted arguably what a lot of scouts contend to be the number one player in the draft. There were a couple of scouts that broke free from the Jack Hughes camp that was like, no, I'd draft Capo Caco if I had the number one pick. So the Rangers have every right to be feeling good about themselves going into this season. And Hank's going to give him that confidence. Hank's going to give him that confidence. Do I think the Rangers have a shot at making the playoffs? Yes. Why the hell not? Yep. Got to get Trouba under contract. Don't let that go too far. Got to get Buchnevich under contract. I'm not so much worried about Brendan Lemieux. That's whatever. But yeah, if Kreider finds that chemistry, I mean, look, I'm not being naive here. If Kreider finds that chemistry with Panarin or Capo Caco, Zibanejad is going to find that chemistry with somebody. Zibanejad's been amazing. You got a nice little, and you got young players, right? Every one of them. The entire Rangers forward core is under the age of 27. The oldest guy on this team, as far as forwards go, is Artemi Panarin, and he's 27. So all of these guys are going to be hard up to make, a good impression. Ryan Strom's useless, though. That you got going against you. I'm sorry to say, but Ryan Strome is absolutely a minus, a complete minus. And you're like, oh, no big deal. We'll put him on the third line. Nope, he takes away from the team. His roster spot would be better off given to somebody else completely. But you got Elias Anderson, right? I mean, you got some interesting things. If you're a Rangers fan, your depression time was very short, right? It was very, very short. We all cried when Hank cried over Zuccarello leaving. We all kind of were like, oh, damn, he lost his best buddy. We were all a little bit down in the dumps when that happened. But outside of that, I mean, it's been a fairly quick turnaround. Now, if the Rangers miss, I still feel like this is a rebuild year for them. Because, again, if they can't trade Kreider, or if they give him an opportunity and he doesn't go anywhere because he does have a modified no-move clause, he's an unrestricted free agent. This is your last year with him. You don't have to worry about him or his $4.5 million after this year. You know what I mean? So, and the Rangers have bought themselves 3 years. They've bought themselves a good amount of time. So this is a great time. The only people less stressed than the New York Rangers franchise is Ron Francis. That's the only person. That's the only general manager sweating less than Jeff Gordon is Ronnie Francis, because he literally cannot do anything to his team. except hire a good front office right now. That is it. So it's good times. And then you added JD to the front office. So you're running interference with the moron who owns you. I mean, it's happiness all around. I wouldn't even focus on the playoffs as much as I would focus on who's Artemi Panarin gonna find that long-term chemistry with. Is it Kreider? Is it Zibanejad? Is it Capo Caco? Who's that going to be with? Focus on getting that into perspective. Because from a contract standpoint, Kreider, Nemenstikov, Strome, Bolesky, Fost, Greg McKegg, who's not really all that significant. You got 5 or 6 or 7 forwards that are coming off of your contract, coming off of your books at the end of this year. So no matter what the Rangers do and look like this season, making the playoffs or not, fighting for it or missing it or whatever, you're still looking at a remold, a remake, new opportunities come the 2021 season. So I wouldn't get too hung up on expectations this year so far for the Rangers. By the way, this is why I love doing this show, because we came on with the intention of story A was Ron Francis, and we went right to the Rangers. And I love it because there's a lot of captivating things there. But that Trouba, don't go to arbitration with Jacob Trouba. Don't do it. That's a mistake. That is an absolute mistake with a guy that you want to get down long term. But they may have to, as I point out in the blog, go check it out at hockeytalkshow.com. They may have to move Kreider in order to make room for the money that they have to give to Jacob Trouba. Because as the Rangers sit right now, they have $7 million in cap space. I think with some wiggle room and sending guys down or whatever, that gets to maybe 8. If Trouba wants more than that, or if he wants 7 or 8, which he's absolutely in the right to command for at least a year, if not more, but you still have to get Buchnevich on the contract. You still have Brandon Lemieux. You still have Anthony DeAngelo that you have to get under contract too. So You've got to add some more. I mean, you got to put Anthony DeAngelo under contract. He's worth making in the lineup for you, so somebody's got to go out the other way. And is Kevin Shattenkirk tradable? I don't know. I would say honestly no, based on his performance, and he does have a no move. In fact, a lot of the Rangers defense have a no move. Stahl's got a no move, and Brendan Smith has a no move. So there's some tough issues to deal with there if you're the New York Rangers, for sure. Let me see here. I hope I'm not missing any of the questions that are flying through. Chicago would be a great fit for him, or even Florida maybe. What are the Wings doing? Don't get it. Yeah, I don't know if anybody gets what the Detroit Red Wings are doing. Although I will say, and I'll touch on the Islanders here a little bit with this, Valtteri Filppula, that was a great signing. It was a lot of money, but that was a great signing. I think the Islanders are going to miss Valtteri Filppula a little bit here. I thought he was a phenomenal third-line player, took face-offs, played the wing, had that sweet little backhand move, put a couple in the net this year. I mean, I don't think that the Islanders realize how much they're going to miss Valtteri Filppula, although they have that Kavi kid who looks like he is probably going to wind up stepping into the lineup this year. We'll see how he does with training camp and everything else. Let's talk Mitch Marner. Let's talk offer sheets. But first, just a quick thought on Ron Francis and him coming to the forefront here and being named the first general manager. I have to get to this, or else people will be like, yeah, hey, you titled the episode Ron Francis and you didn't talk about Ron Francis at all. I think that this is a super, super interesting hire on the part of the Seattle franchise, who is nameless so far. No name for the Seattle 32nders, as they're known in most hockey circles these days. I think this is a super, super interesting hire because Ron's a patient guy, right? He was a patient forward. He was a pass-first forward, good team guy, captain to 3 National Hockey League teams, the 3 that he was on. He was the general manager for the Carolina Hurricanes for 3 seasons, made the absolute, bar none, not even close, least amount of moves during his tenure as a general manager. I mean, I know hockey franchises, especially expansion ones, want to go slowly and grow their talent and, get into that whole thing. But, I mean, when this guy moves, snails look at him and go, damn, that is slow. Ron Francis don't move for nothing. Moss gathers on a stone faster than this guy makes moves in the National Hockey League. So if you're a fan of the Seattle, or if you're a fan of trades or the expansion process, which how friggin' fun was the Vegas expansion process? The whole entire season. I mean, not just because it was really our first year doing the Hockey Talk Show, but that whole first season for the Vegas Golden Knights was so damn exciting. Just everything, the rumors and the trades and all the moves and the slick little deals that whole franchise put together. George McPhee was like a surgeon. He was a surgeon moving that knife around, making those side deals. I won't pick this player, give me that draft pick kind of thing. By the way, all the general managers, every single one of them, all 30 of them, had buyer's remorse after that expansion franchise. They hated and felt like they all got robbed and taken because they started worrying about, well, I got to protect this guy and I got to protect that guy, and all this kind of stuff started coming up. And at the end of the day, they thought, you know what? I gave up too much here. I gave up too much to protect this guy, or I gave up too much to protect that guy. You know what I mean? So Ron Francis has a lot cut out for him, And he is not going to have the success that the Vegas Golden Knights had. Absolutely not. Because all the general managers came out and said, we gave up too much. We didn't, we were too protective of this, too protective of that. We did too much. And we're not going to do that next time around. So Seattle wound up paying $150 million more for their franchise, and they are not going to be as robust as the Vegas Golden Knights were in their first year. Now, Vegas had a couple things going for them. Obviously, the tragedy with the shooting was one thing that really brought the team together quickly. There was a whole combination of things that made that season pretty magical, but they did gather a ton of assets, and I don't think Seattle's going to have that same opportunity. The only reason why, and we'll get more into this as we get closer to Seattle because we're still 2 years away from them, the only reason why I can see Seattle sort of jumping in and maybe making a splash here is if we have a repeat of RFA class like we've had in this offseason, which we've only had one offer sheet, still one more than we've had the last 3 off seasons, but we only had one. But still, I would think that if we get a lot of players that are going into RFA status, if you're looking at the Mitch Marners, if you're looking at the Patrick Laines, if you're looking at some of these teams that have 2 or 3 guys that they still have to get under contract and they don't have a lot of space, then and only then can I see them going, all right, Seattle, why don't you take this guy off my hands and give me some picks back, or give me, whatever, and then we'll work it out. So what I'm saying is, if the RFA classes continue the way they did this offseason, the next couple of off seasons, and there's certainly that potential there, I can see Seattle maybe having an advantage in that sort of respect. Like, hey, there's a lot of RFAs out there and there's some cap crunch teams. Let's hop right in. Let's get some of these guys off their books. Also, if the cap evens out, remember, the cap didn't go up this season as much as a lot of people hoped it would. So that is something to consider as well. As far as offer sheets go, I feel like the Islanders came close. This hasn't been confirmed anywhere. This is not rumor. This is not what I heard. This is just gut feeling that Montreal and the Islanders, which was reported that they were the ones to do it, made the phone calls, maybe even put the offer sheet in front of Mitch Marner, and it didn't go for whatever reason. Marner not signing, money not right, location, he wants to stay in Toronto. Whatever the hell it was, I think Lou did his due diligence. I think Mark Bergevin did his due diligence. I think they both sat there and said, at least had a conversation with the agent, which was like, hey, what would it take? What's your number? What are you guys looking for? What can I do? Let me know. Can I put a sheet together? What do you think? Give me a call back. At the very least, if it was that, it was definitely that. I mean, I know for sure Columbus did. Columbus definitely called up, begged and pleaded. Can I send his mom chocolates? What can I do? Columbus sitting there with $30 million in offers and just a goodbye wave to all their free agents and their draft picks. So Columbus definitely asked, and we know for sure. I mean, we don't know for sure, but we know for sure that Mitch Marner was not going to the Columbus Blue Jackets. not to leave it's one thing to leave and go to the Montreal Canadiens. It's another thing to leave and go to New York. You're not going to Columbus if you're Mitch Marner. No way, no how. So that's that. What I think is interesting now, and this I can't take credit for. Let me see who I can give credit to. But when I read this, I was like, that makes a whole hell of a lot of sense to me right now. Oh, Bob McKenzie. Totally makes sense. Bob McKenzie said just 2 days ago that his view, and by the way, Bob McKenzie renamed himself on Twitter Bobby Margarita because he's up in a cabin somewhere enjoying some time off while we're here doing a live hockey talk show and writing some blogs. But that's okay. Bob's the best in the business. He reports news. We don't. We just talk hockey. Bob says, and this makes a lot of sense to me. As for Marner, my view is that from afar, it's probably close to or at the point where Toronto hopes an offer sheet is tendered that would allow/force closure one way or the other. Match the offer sheet or take the compensation, but it would be done. I've said this in the blogs. I've said this on the show before. I will reiterate and say again, there is no end in sight for this. Marner wants 12. That's obviously his number. Toronto only has 11 available. If he was willing to take 11, he would have signed by now. So he's sitting there with his arms crossed on one side, and Toronto is sitting there going, we cannot give you 12. We don't have it. And they're sitting there with their arms crossed on the other side. So what does an offer sheet do? An offer sheet gives Kyle Dubas the right to go, I'm sorry, so-and-so, probably Nylander, but we have to trade you. Mitch Marner's too important to the franchise. He can't do it now because then he looks like the bad guy. Then he looks like the idiot who went out and said, I see a path to sign all these guys, when he had no chance of doing that. But when it comes down to the situation and the scenario and the circumstances changing, then he can turn around and say, look, I had no choice. We had to move William Nylander, or we had to move player X to get it done. William Nylander's obviously the obvious choice there. He's got a fresh contract. It is pretty affordable for most teams, and any team would kill to have William Nylander on their franchise, especially because they'll give him up for a relatively cheaper price, not a total cheap price, but a cheaper price than what he would go for if the Toronto Maple Leafs were in a position of power. But the Toronto Maple Leafs, if such a thing were to happen, would only have 6 days to make a trade and make that all work, even though I think they can go over the cap a certain amount, so that would get a little fuzzy. But anyway, they would have a tight time frame to get a Nylander deal done. And it would take some pretty slick moves from the general managers to make that happen. Robert, Marner is not worth 12. He's a winger, and he put up huge points with Tavares 2 years ago. Marner was a third-line player for the Leafs. Tavares helped Marner's game. Agree with half of that. Marner's a talented player. Marner minus Tavares is probably still good for what? 65, 70 points? I mean, he might not be a 90-point player, but you know what the other thing, too, is? This is what John Tavares does. Look at Kyle Okposo. Look at Josh Bailey, right? I mean, what's his name? Oh, God. I was about to say Justin Papineau. That was way too far back. Way too far back. The guy that went to Toronto and signed a big deal in Toronto, P.A. Parento. P.A. Parento got big fat numbers off of John Tavares, went out and signed a big deal. Like, a lot of people benefit from the Tavares boost. You know, Buffalo is still regretting that Kyle Okposo deal. A lot of people still regretting those deals that they gave out as a result. Honestly, Anders Lee is the only player that lost Tavares and still put up huge points. He's the only guy. So there's a little bit of truth to what you're saying. But the point, here's the thing, Robert, and this is what a lot of agents are saying. You may be right. Maybe he's not a $12 million player. Maybe he's a $10 million player. But you know what? When a player comes up of his caliber 2-3 years down the line, if the cap continues to go up, he will be worth $12 million, right? Remember when Connor McDavid signed his $12.5 million deal, that was like, whoa, it's the biggest deal. Here's the guy, heir apparent to Sidney Crosby. He's the next best player. Erik Karlsson now makes $1 million less than him, right? I mean, that field vanished like that, the way the cap kept going up and the way the demands of the higher producing players, what they were asking for. So that's what his representation is in there for. That's what the rep is saying. Because if you look at the Boston Bruins, they have such a cap-friendly team, but they all signed at a time when that's what was going on at that time. You know what I mean? Like, that's what was happening then. Those were the big numbers then, and they're not anymore. The numbers are way up. So I understand what you're saying, and that's what Kyle Dubas is in there fighting for, but Marner and his representation are not. And my feeling is this is solely on Marner at this point, because the Toronto Maple Leafs would take him tomorrow, and the Maple Leafs are sitting there going, look, we don't want to trade Nylander, and we don't want to trade so-and-so. You can have all the remaining money that's left if you want it. And Marner's not coming to terms. So if this is a fight for $400,000 or $500,000, at the end of the day, it's kind of stupid, and it's gonna start looking really stupid. And each side is going to try and make the other side look stupid. But Marner can go out and sign a sheet if he wants it, and the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to match. And then they're going to have to make a move. The thing with offer sheets are they hurt feelings no matter what. Look at every one of them that was signed. Every guy who signed the last couple of offer sheets wound up getting traded eventually a short time later. It hurts. And it winds up putting some hurt in your locker room too. Finally, as we get down to the home stretch, any last questions, shoot them in the chat. We'll try and get to them. Why do I keep seeing Rasmus Ristolainen's name in trade rumors? Why is this happening? I don't understand for the life of me, because he was one of the future building blocks of the Buffalo Sabres. And now anytime anybody comes up, Rasmus Ristolainen's name is in the trade rumors. This guy was like the heir apparent. He was your Drew Doughty. He was your, right? I mean, name the 1A defenseman in the National Hockey League, and Rasmus Ristolainen was it for the Buffalo Sabres. But suddenly we live in a world now where Jason Botterill is out there acquiring every single defenseman he can get. Colin Miller comes in, right? They just trade for Yoki Aru. Who's the other one that they just added? They just added somebody else. You have Rasmus Dahlin and all this and that. But Rasmus Ristolainen, I mean, is there not room for two Rasmuses? Rasmusi? How do you say it? In Buffalo, is there not enough room? He's making $5.5 million. He's a really good defenseman. He's 24 years old. Why is this guy always rumored to be on the move? I don't get it. I really just don't get it. Am I missing something about Rasmus Ristolainen? Because I feel like now, if these rumors are true, there's something that we really just don't even know. Like, something's got to be going on there. But if you have an opportunity to scoop up Rasmus Ristolainen, do it. But I haven't seen a reason why this guy's name would continue to be in the trade rumors, but it constantly is. Constantly is. Finally, I don't think that Marner gets a offer sheet at this point. I think we've passed that moment. I think all your big attractive, the teams that could pull a guy, the Islanders, Montreal, that could actually get him. I think they're over that right now, and they, like, the Islanders for sure would have to make a move if they went for Marner. But I think Patrick Laine becomes the next most interesting guy to go. I think if we do get a second offer sheet in this offseason, it'll be Patrick Laine. Because Winnipeg, again, and it was a good move. By the way, and let me just say this about the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think Kyle Dubas' moves up to date so far have been stellar. This is some of the best managing that he has done. He's replenished his blue line. He's brought in some really good defensemen, and he hasn't really had to sacrifice much. And he's still kept himself around $11 million in cap space if he does get Mitch Marner under contract. That's a really good move. I mean, this is the best GMing that he's done so far since he's been a general manager. So good on him for that. But back to the Winnipeg Jets. They're to me, the moving Trouba was a good move. I know they do have a lot of cap space available. I think they're, according to Cap Friendly right now, at $22 million. It's just that Kyle Connor, Andrew Kopp, and Patrick Laine all need to get paid. Neil Pionk, if they're going to keep him, needs to get paid. And those aren't some of the biggest issues, because you have Joshua Morrissey, who is an RFA after this season. and Kulikov and a couple of other their defensemen are going to need some contracts as well. So, it's easy to get their guys under payment right now with the $22 million, but Morrissey is going to get one hell of a pay raise. That's probably the reason why they were able to trade Trouba, because they know they definitely want to get Morrissey under contract moving forward. And I don't know. I feel like, and I said this before, that was the team because they had the three guys, the three big ones in Laine, Connor, and Trouba to get under a contract. They were at a threat to be offer sheeted. Now that they only have two, and Andrew Kopp, to a degree, he's not a Trouba, but he's in the mix. I still think there's a shot there. And I also think there's such a stalemate here to go with Priscilla's comment about Laine or Point. I think Point's gotten a lot of phone calls. I think Point doesn't want to go anywhere else but the Tampa Bay Lightning. And the thing that's a killer there is they just really don't have the space. They really don't. And they have the $5 million now. And I think that's already counting the Callahan injured reserve. I think that is. Because I'm on Cap Friendly and Callahan is already listed under the injury reserve. So there's their $5 million right there. But again, Braden Point, that's a $7 million player. That's a $9 million player in a state where you have state tax. But in Florida, they can get away with that. Look, we can pay you $1 million less to, maybe you get him on a short-term bridge for $5 million, but Braden Point, I get he wants to stay in Tampa. Makes sense. You certainly have a great chance of winning there. I don't see a 7 or 8 year contract in his future. Not the way this team is built and stacked, frankly. They're stacked. You can make the argument, well, let's trade Tyler Johnson and free up the other $5 million. Okay, maybe, but you gotta make those moves. You gotta make those moves. Let's finish up on John's point. Disappointed in Lamoriello. I'm seeing this from a lot of people. John, I'm not singling you out. It is the utmost definition of a fanatic to be upset with Lou Lamoriello's performance so far. The guy has had 2 summers to deal with, and we're not even done with the second one yet. Give the guy time. A fanatic is somebody who loves something without reason. The Islander fans are showing that to its truest form of the definition. There is no reason there. Lou Lamoriello is one of the best general managers in the game, okay? He is part of the reason why this team went from loser to playoff content. They won a round. They won a round, people. And don't give me I saw this, we have the station here in the city, WFAN, and the guy who writes the blog is a very nice guy. I'm not going to say his name. He's a very nice guy. But he's sitting there going, well, there's a lot of puck luck stats. And get the hell out of my face. Puck luck stats? Dude, the guy signed the goaltender that did it. He let him go, but whatever. He signed the coach that did it. He brought in the staff that did it. We act like Robin Lehner wasn't with issue before he got to the Islanders. And I mean on ice, not off ice. I mean on ice. The Islanders coaching staff, their goalie gurus, fixed Robin Lehner. And Lou thinks that they can do the same with Semyon Varlamov. Lou believes it's the system, not the individual players. That's also what won him 3 Stanley Cups with the New Jersey Devils. That's also what built a base around the Toronto Maple Leafs that they're going to be contending for years and years to come. The guy is one of the best general managers in the game. Don't sit there going, I hate Lou Lamoriello because Artemi Panarin wanted to go to the Rangers no matter what. It's not Lou Lamoriello's fault. And all those rumors about Anders Lee getting pushed to sign or whatever, we found out afterwards that Anders Lee was in direct communication with Lou the entire time and was totally okay with everything. Now, he could be just saying that to smooth it all over, but I actually believe it. Has anyone done a cap differential based on state tax and non-state tax? Matt, we're going to end on your point because that's utter brilliance. Because as fair as the cap system has been in the National Hockey League, there is a slight unfairness, and Tampa has exploited that better than anybody. And the thing is that the Canadian teams, their tax system sucks even harder than the states, so the Canadian teams wind up getting the raw end of this whole deal to begin with. And the Canadian teams have to pay all their players in American money, and they don't get to charge their local fans in American dollars. They get to pay Canadian prices to buy a ticket, and they go ahead and hand John Tavares a check with United States dollars on it. That is grossly unfair. But the Canadian teams don't really complain all that much about it. Not in open doors, at least. Fun stuff here. It's Thursday. Unless something major happens, I don't foresee a show over the next couple of days. But definitely next week, we will check back in, and we'll go with the two-way talk, and we'll see where Mitch Marner is. We'll see if there's any progress between Patrick Laine and Kyle Connor. There's been the one thing that Laine said was he kind of came out and said, listen, chill on the rumor mill there, because just because I haven't signed yet doesn't mean I'm going to go ahead and leave, which I get. What else can you say at that point? But I still think, just based on that team's cap status, that he deserves to be paid a lot. So does Kyle Connor. Copp deserves what he deserves. And Morrissey's going to deserve a whole hell of a lot next season. So I think that team is just ripe for the plucking. And I think Braden Point is the kind of guy that, yeah, he hasn't signed yet, but like Marner, he's going to have to accept reality at some point and come around and realize this is all your team has to do. This is all your team has to give. Check back on the updates for the blog posts. Make sure you guys are subscribed on Facebook, and make sure you're getting our notifications. Make sure you're seeing our notifications first. In order to do that, you just go right on over to our Facebook page, and where it says following or like, hover your mouse over that and make sure you get you select see notifications first. And again, if you listen to this on the podcast or you watch on the Facebook feed all the time, we need to bump our subscribers on YouTube. Hands down, we got to do it. It's reached that point. We're a little behind on that. Tell your friends, look, subscribe to the show on YouTube. It's good. And if you can give the 99 cents a month, that would certainly be helpful. We got links in the descriptions. Fun talking hockey with you guys on this Thursday. This show should be good for a couple of days, so we'll check back in next week. I hope your team winds up signing that RFA that you so desperately need, and we'll catch you on the next shift.